And you're very welcome. This is Fintan Dunne with your Betfair Trump Punters legal update for Monday, 8th of March 2021. Are you ready to go to war? I hope so, because we are. I'd like to thank first those who I can name and those who I can't, who have been helping out over the last couple of weeks as we have looked into the legal and other issues behind moving forward against Betfair. In particular, Joey, as some of you know, has posted legal analysis in the Telegram group, and Andy has been stalwart defender of reason in the Telegram group as well, and also has been involved, as have others, behind the scenes in deep research into all of this. And the good news is we are ready to go to war on two fronts. We have got green lights on two fronts, folks, and I'll lay out how that's going to work. Essentially, we were pondering what way to do it. Would we launch a claim with IBAS? Would we launch a mass class action? Would we have limited action with a small number of claimants who had high stakes? Trying to figure out the angles on all of that. And the good news is that we have got green lights everywhere, really, both for the legal case and the IBAS case. On the legal side, I'll just remind you what that's like. We have, as you will have seen, this was released there by me a couple of weeks ago now, the Trump Punters Legal Action Group statement of the legal issues. And so what we're proposing is that we move forward with these claims, that we are in a position, it seems, based on all the legal reaction we've gotten, that we have a stateable case that Betfair breached contract with us when they closed the market on the 14th of December 2020, and that they closed it well in advance of the official result, which didn't come until the 7th of January, and therefore that was nearly 3 weeks later. We also say that Betfair was negligent in setting the rules for the 2020 next president market, and that they were bound by the public advice they issued to the general public and to individual customers with respect to the timing of the closure of the market, and that the advices they gave were contrary to what they did subsequently. And then we claim, in addition, that we were denied our due opportunities to trade in that market where we had built up stakes to considerable advantage to benefit from those positions in the market in the run-up to the official result on the 7th of January. And of course, they robbed us of that opportunity to so benefit by closing the market on 14th of December 2020. So that's the legal side of things. And then there's the IBAS side of things. So how does that dovetail with IBAS? So let's see now. That's the stateable legal case. And if you like, what we have here is a twin track approach. We're going to advance that case for those who have sufficient funds at risk here. In other words, enough money that it makes it worthwhile to consider legal action. So it looks like we can pursue legal action, but probably for those who have a high stake. And alternatively, of course, there is the IBAS route, where there is no upfront cost. And indeed, all of us can go down the IBAS route and see how that goes. So we propose to wage war on two fronts. On the one hand, by moving en masse to IBAS and lodging our complaints there, and I'll go through the IBAS stuff now and show you how that will likely succeed or not based on what they've already said themselves, and it's encouraging. And then at the same time, our high rollers will be trying to roll their legal cannons up within range of Betfair headquarters, and they'll be getting large legal cannonballs and dropping them down into those legal cannons and sticking fuses in, ready to ignite. And obviously we'll be watching how things go with IBAS, so that if at any point we're not happy with the way things are going in IBAS, we can simply light the fuses on those cannons pointed at Betfair HQ and fire. So the no-cost route, which we can all follow right now, is through IBAS, and I'll explain the nuances of that in a moment, but let's look at the case. So IBAS are already in their public statements on record as saying that unclear market terms are grounds for them to consider acting against the likes of Betfair. For example, if the terms, and they give an example here, first to leave the Big Brother house, suppose that's the bet. Well, that should say whether the individual needs to be evicted by a telephone vote or whether a walkout or a producer-initiated departure will also count. See, so if there's confusion there, potential confusion there, then that's negligent on the part of the betting company because they didn't specify enough in the terms. So they say where there's more than one reasonable or plausible interpretation of a term in the consumer contract, the 2015 Consumer Rights Act stipulates that the term which is most favourable to the consumer must apply. IBAS has implemented this term on many occasions and will continue to do so. So they're saying that the consumer has a right, if there's ambiguity in the terms, especially if that's due to the negligence of the betting operator, then the consumer has a right to the most favourable of those ambiguous interpretations by the Consumer Act of 2015. And it's saying that IBAS has ruled in consumers' favour in the past and will continue to do so where a market is carelessly, unclearly described and open to legitimate conflicting interpretations. So if we're saying we legitimately, when we bet, thought we're betting on who's going to be next president, which is an outcome, which outcome happens on the 6th, 7th of January 2021, well, then we were entitled to interpret all terms, if they're vague and ambiguous, to support our view. If we could legitimately have read the terms to seem like, with talk of 12th Amendment and the rest of this, that this thing was going to go all the way and taking the bet on its face value of a next president bet, we would have no reason not to think that we weren't getting what it said on the tin. And we've a right to get exactly what it says on the tin. In this case, we didn't. So there you go. That's like long before this issue of this particular election comes up. IBAS are on the record saying that, look, we do rule in favour of terms, ambiguous terms, when it comes to consumers' rights. And then there's also the whole issue of the timing of a settlement. And here's some of their public statements. They do say that there's a legitimate basis to ask whether bets on the election should be settled before the new president is inaugurated, a ceremony due to take place on the 20th of January. They were talking about that on the 16th of December, just after Betfair had closed the market. They were saying, well, there is a legitimate basis to argue that perhaps one should wait until a new president is inaugurated. But then they also say that, you know, the people who backed Biden were entitled to fair process as well. Maybe they're looking, hey, we'd like our money now. Biden's going to win. So if IBAS was asked to adjudicate on such a complaint, it would look at a number of factors. So here now they're going to lay out for us the factors which they would look at if they're asked to rule on these issues. So first of all, the betting rules of the business in question. Do they set out the point at which bets on US presidential elections will be settled? Has that point been reached? And were the rules in place before the disputed bet was struck? Well, we say the betting rules were junk, were rubbish. They were incomprehensible legally, they were contradictory, they were vague, and they also altered the terms of a straightforward bet on an outcome into a bet which was a bet on what television companies thought the outcome would be, which isn't what we bet on. Well, they say if we're asked to look at that, they go on, our adjudication panel would be asked whether on balance the affected betting markets have been managed fairly. And that really comes right down to the fact of whether we had fair process there. And we would ask whether a company had acted reasonably in the approach they had taken and in the unusual circumstances of a protracted, legally contested US election result. Well, what's going to shed a lot of light on the answers to those questions as to whether Betfair's actions were reasonable is the incomprehensible nature of their market rules, and also our legitimate entitlement to a straightforward bet on an outcome. But also, it's, if you look at the terms here now, you see where it says here, were the rules in place before the disputed bet was struck? Well, it's even better than that, IBAS. The rules in place are in place for the next election, and they do it right. Betfair's own rules for the next election do it right. They accommodate a situation where there's going to be a contested outcome and where one candidate has not conceded, which is something that should have been included in the original rules. So we're going to be in a strong position to compare Betfair's 2024 market rules with their just expired 2020 market rules, which they changed. And we'll be making the case to IBAS. They changed those rules because they were so bad. They had to fix them for the next election. And so they can hardly defend them now, can they? That goes to the heart of our case. And they also, in a public statement, IBAS, this is again IBAS now, in their public statements, said there must be an appropriate practical cut-off point for bets on a presidential election. And they said, arguably that date was on the 7th of November when the American news networks declared the election result. Arguably it was 6th of January when the US Senate certified the Electoral College votes. Arguably it was the 20th of January when the president was inaugurated. Betfair said whichever of these or any other date was preferable, we're satisfied there can be no reasonable basis for bets to remain open and unsettled any further. And that's fine. Yeah, we all know that there's no reason for bets not to be settled. But here you see them admit that arguably it was the date that we think is appropriate because it's the legal date, 6th of January 2021. And so they've already acknowledged that. And one thing I do find missing in Betfair's public statements is any consideration of this as like a stock market, which it was. A betting exchange is not a straight bet with a bookie because the bookmaker's not on the other end of the bet. It's some other punters on the other end of the bet. The bookie's taking the cut in the middle. So it's not their market. You're not betting against Betfair. You are in a market where you have a right to trade in that market. And I don't see IBAS referencing that aspect of Betfair's operations. Exchange betting. Exchange betting goes to the heart of this, and our losses, which we might have incurred, and also profit opportunities we may have missed because of that. So because of those various rules which I've just gone through there in terms of the various arguable dates there could have been, the need to look and see have we been treated fairly, and also the entitlement we have under the Consumer Rights Act to any ambiguity in terms to be resolved in our favour. That's absolutely key, because the fact that any ambiguity goes our way. So this is not a flip of a coin when it comes to determining who was right about what they say these rules meant. If there's ambiguity in those rules, then we're entitled to the benefit of that ambiguity. So for all those reasons, it looks to me now we really have a solid basis to go forward with IBAS. So how do we get there? Well, stuff that you are going to do and stuff that we behind the scenes who have been working on the legals on this are doing as well. Joey is working on that. I'm working on that to put together a document that you can use as the basis, the legal basis in all the details we've already fleshed out, chapter and verse, so that you don't have to make these complicated legal cases yourself in your application. You simply say, I'm making an application, and for the basis on why I'm complaining about this company, see the attachment which I'm attaching here, which contains the full basis of the complaint and also relevant legislation and legal argument relating to it. But you'll also have to supply to them your IBAS number, and I'll get to, if you don't have one, your IBAS number. You're going to have to supply to IBAS, and that's a number you would have got from Betfair. And you're going to have to give them, if you have, I think it's helpful if you have, your bet reference numbers and bet amounts and bet dates. You should have that from your account on Betfair in the archive of your bets. And you'll find details on how to dig out this stuff in the Telegram group if you go there in the pinned messages. So you'll be giving them that as well, what you bet and when, and your bet reference number, and your email that you used, the email account that you used when you interacted with Betfair, if you used an email account. And then any conversations you had, like screenshots of chat logs with their customer salespeople, especially with regard to when the market was going to be closed, when the market will be settled. If you have that kind of chat log information, then include it. Now, we'll be including in the material we'll supply to you as an attachment that you can attach to this email. We'll be covering that ground. We'll be covering the public statements Betfair have made. So you don't have to go and dig all that out. Just anything personal to you that you had in your exchanges, or details of any conversation you had, whether you have that conversation to hand or not. But you should include any personal interactions that you had with the company along with your application. So that's your IBAS number, bet reference numbers, dates, the bets, amounts of the bets, and then interactions that you had with the company. And we will be supplying the other parts of the documents. And so we should be in a position a week from now where we will have a polished version of the attachments that you can use, and where you'll have had a chance to dig out anything you have. Make sure you have your bet reference number to hand. Now, suppose you don't have an IBAS number. In that case, it looks like you're going to have to go on to the IBAS website and register with them in order to begin to process your claim at all. You cannot email them if you don't have an IBAS number. They won't process you through that email system. That is purely for those who have had an IBAS dispute reference number issued by Betfair to them by email. That's how you get it. And it'd be a good idea to attach that email in your correspondence as well. But just quoting the number is enough. So you'll be quoting your IBAS bet reference. If you don't have a bet reference, it looks like you're going to have to register. So you can start that process. You can start the process of registration. And you're going to have to establish the bona fides of your claim by quoting your bet reference numbers and any other screenshots or downloads of spreadsheet file which shows your bets from Betfair, for example, which you can do. So you're going to have to provide some substantiating information. You won't need that if you have a bet reference number, because Betfair have already acknowledged by issuing that you have a valid complaint registered with them. So those are the only things that will slow us down, is sort of getting that information together and putting that together for you. And of course, this does apply just to the UK. This IBAS stuff is for UK European claimants who can register or use IBAS as their dispute resolution provider. And it's different in Australia. So for the Australian arena, we're going to have to come up with a similar document for the Northern Territories Racing Commission. So that'll take us about another week after next Monday. It'll be the week after, where we'll have something ready that you can actually use to lodge this with the equivalent of IBAS, which is the Northern Territories Racing Commission. And we'll see if we can ground that application in relevant Australian consumer law as well, so that you'll have relevant citations to put in there. But that would cover it. So the ones who are ready to go right now, or will be next Monday, when we'll do another video, which will lay it all out, so no need to panic right now. We'll do a video in a week, lay it all out, show you how to do your email to IBAS and include the document that we would provide, and then show you what you need to provide as well. That's coming in a week's time. And then, so presuming we all swiftly move ahead and file with IBAS, within a couple of weeks, really the vast majority of us should have filed. Now, IBAS is only binding on the companies like Betfair to 10,000 sterling limit, and the companies, if you are seeking or have been awarded more than that by IBAS, the companies can object and can decide that they want to go to court to get that matter resolved. But of course, so can we. So, but it nevertheless, despite the ability of the potential for Betfair to go to court for amounts over 10,000, it's unlikely that they would. In practice, the companies tend to abide. It doesn't look good if you're refusing to go along with what an independent arbitration and dispute resolution body has advised. So it's not good PR to do that. I would expect that they would be bound. So no matter whether you placed an amount small or large, then IBAS is a route that you can follow, and it is likely that Betfair will accommodate even if the ruling is for more than 10,000. And that means that we could potentially all be sorted out using the IBAS route if that was to go our way. But this is the real world. Not everything goes your way in the real world. Who knows? We shall see. But we're not relying on that track alone. We're using that track because it's one we can all take, which is great because we all move forward together, large or small. And so that's a good reason to do so. But also because it doesn't cost us anything so to do, and it means that we can take our time on the legal side. And suppose we all get our applications in the next week or so, I would hope that IBAS would rule relatively soon thereafter, so that we all know where we stand within a couple of months. And essentially, from the moment they make their first ruling, I think it will be pretty evident which way things are going. By the time they've made a few rulings that we hear of, we'll pretty much know the lie of the land. And then we'll see where we go from there. If we're then in a position that we don't like the way the land is lying, then we light the fuses. And then that would, that's the beginning of having to spend, actual money in order to recover money lost. And that's the business decision point will be reached then at that point. No point in doing that in advance of needing so to do. So that's the strategy. Twin track. Use IBAS. It'll certainly work for all of us if it works at all. If we don't like the way it's working, then we activate the legal route. And there's obviously a cut-off point for those who might want to come aboard the early phases of that. Were a legal dispute to go all the way, it could set a precedent if it was taken to court by Betfair. So that's a disincentive for them to go to court, because that precedent would mean that, in effect, all punters, even those who aren't part of our initiative here, will be in a position to make valid claim against Betfair, and they will be caught for the whole lot. So there are many things in our favour. This, however, is not a race to see who gets there first. It's to see who makes the best arguments most coherently and gets the judgments in their favour. That's what we're in business to do. So within a week, we'll be back with another video, which will show you how to launch that process off. If you haven't got an IBAS number, or you have any other issues that you wish to try and get assistance with, I'd recommend the Telegram group There's a link in the video description to the Telegram group, and that's the best place for you to get direct assistance. And there's pinned messages there which you can click on, and you can click on them in sequence in the pinned section at the top of the group, and it'll go through all the background to this. All right, I'll be back with more, with the rest of the legal ammunition you'll need in order to take things on to IBAS very soon. I hope you'll join me for that. Thanks to everyone who's helped out and who is helping out behind the scenes and in front of the scenes on this. And I do hope you'll join me for that soon. Take care. Bye for now.